A few weeks back, I was reading Hunter S. Thompson's The Great Shark Hunt. Basically, Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail. I believe it was 1971 or 1972, reporting on the Nixon-McGovern presidential election. And there was a passage that stood out to me. There was a passage that I sent to a number of friends because I felt that it encapsulated a great deal of politics, culture, American society, and basically pointed the arrow towards where we would end up today in Donald Trump's America 2025. The passage read, "It is a very mean game that these high-rolling, cold-hearted hustlers play. The President of the United States may no longer be the most powerful man in the world, but he is still close enough to be sure that nobody else in the world is going to cross him by accident. And anybody who starts looking like he might get his hands on that kind of power had better get comfortable right from the start, with the certain knowledge that he is going to have to lean on some very mean and merciless people just to get himself elected." I sent that to my podcast partner, Mr. Ibrahim Chavez. I sent that to my friend in North Carolina, my friends, a couple of friends on the job. And it just seemed to me that like when something jumps out at you, it jumps out at you for a reason. It resonates with your being. And the cold, hard truth can be a difficult thing for a lot of people. And even at this point in my life, at 50 years old, after I've been as cynical and pessimistic as I am, and as seemingly hopeless as I've found myself to be, it's still surprising that you can find something that goes back 4 or 5 decades from a time before I was born. A lot of you who are listening were probably born, and you understand the cycle of the negativity, greed, and avarice that controls this country. With that being said, I suggested to you, my partner in this weekly endeavor, that we should finally sit down, watch, and discuss Terry Gilliam's 1998 adaptation of Hunter S. Thompson's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, a film that has sat with me for over 2 decades now as both a warning and a mirror to the society that we live in. That being said, I'm really interested in where this discussion is going to go, and your particular take on both the narrative here, the 2 characters portrayed, Oscar Zeta Acosta as Dr. Gonzo and Hunter S. Thompson as Raoul Duke, but also the state of the country, 1971, and almost 50 years later. So, look, actually, over 50 years later. Have we learned nothing? Are we capable of learning anything? I don't anticipate a positive or optimistic upcoming hour. So, let's jump into this thing and figure out where the fuck it is that we are. Please, Mr. Chavez, give me your take.
All right. Well, you suggested this episode or this topic, this film. A member, Alan Lambert, referenced it in like a list of potential episodes that he sent when I asked him about requests. So let's just go ahead and dedicate this to him. buymeacoffee.com/WatchRickRamos, buymeacoffee.com/WatchRickRamos. You know what that means. This episode is brought to you by us. It's fucking brought to you by us. We're the ones bringing it to you. Anyway, I have mixed. This time around, I haven't seen it in years.
Let me ask you something really quick. Did you ever see it in a theater?
I think I did. I don't fucking remember, which sucks. The idea of did I see it in the? And I'm like, I think I did, but I don't like. Let's just say no, because it I don't feel like I did, but I feel like I was around when it came out in the theater. But let's say no.
We'll get back to that a little bit later, but I want to lay the foundation on that one.
Yeah. It's been a long time since I read the book. So for this time around, number one, I'll say, so like the 60s, the film and the story in the film have and had some good highs. And there was purpose and there was meaning there behind it, but ultimately turns into a bad trip, I think. And I say that in terms of the story and the what happens in the film, but also as a critique of the film.
That's going to be a real interesting angle to take at it, because I think, I'm sorry to cut you off, but it's a point that I do want to get out there. I think that is deliberate. And I think it's important that everybody involved, including Thompson and Gilliam as the director, made it progressively uglier and a more difficult experience. I think that's purposeful, and I think it's important to the narrative.
I agree. I just think that there is a missing piece, and that's the idea that the bad trip is basically the metaphor of the film. But I feel that there's so much of that metaphor, of that message, that's relegated to the background tonally by minimizing the commentary on the 60s.
Okay.
It minimizes it to me to basically a few lines that are like delivered as a punchline at the end, or as a backdrop, or among many lines in this long fucking hallucination. So I feel like it gets lost. I think Gilliam, as a visual artist, doing a visual medium and being a master of that, and also expanding on Stedman's like illustrations in the book, and as a longtime collaborator of Thompson, as an expansion, all that, I think his focusing on the visuals and on the look, on the feel, even though he's getting like the narrative voice, the conspiratorial kind of paranoid voice of Thompson, I think he misses on tone. I think he misses on I think it's the tone that's lost. And I couldn't get away from the fact that as I was watching this movie this latest time, I kept thinking, fuck, what would it have been like had Oliver Stone directed this?
Which was one of the original potential directors, Scorsese, Alex Cox, and Oliver Stone. Yeah.
Like, I think Scorsese, would have, and this is a kind of a stereotype, but I think it's true. Scorsese, I think, really would have brought out a lot of the contemporary musical elements that would have given the film context. Look, you go to Vegas, there are no fucking clocks. You go to Vegas, you can't see outside. You don't know what time it is. You don't know if it's day or night. It's just Vegas time. It's perpetually fucking Vegas time. And I think a film like this, you need to be able to look outside or to see outside, metaphorically, so that you can see the context of the actual time. It just feels, I mean, as a film, it's cool because it's like, well, this seems like does it stand the test of time, or does it feel like a movie from the late 90s? No, it feels eternal because it's just this crazy film. So in that sense, it's like, that's a positive. Normally you say that in terms of being a positive, and there is that here too. But what I mean is that there's no context to the times that it's depicting, and I think Oliver Stone would have captured the madness and the drugs and the music and all that, but also the sense of the loss of the 60s, which is really what it's about. I think he would have used the film as a metaphor in a way that he used Natural Born Killers as a metaphor for the 90s. So if you take the drug metaphor of Bad Trip further, it's kind of like, well, there's a bad trip. It's when you have a bad trip, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare that you want to end. If you have just a basic good trip, it's visual, it's auditory, if you're listening to music, it's fun, it's like, okay, I'm tripping, like, okay, cool. But on what you're really trying to do with the mind expansion, what you're really trying to do is to get to the other side of getting fucked up, which is to arrive at an insight. And while it's there in the film, I think that there's a huge potential for it to be lost because it just becomes a film about two guys getting fucked up in Vegas, and not so much about how two guys getting fucked up in Vegas, two guys going to Vegas to so-called find the American dream, is that, well, they found the American dream, which is an American nightmare. I feel like that's there, but with all the madness in Terry Gilliam's film, that needed to be driven home more clearly, I think. And I'll say this, because it's been a long time since I read the book. I don't know if that message, how deeply it's buried in the story of two guys getting fucked in Vegas in the book either. So I'll grant it that it might be buried. I just don't know to what level. So that was my initial take on this film.
See, this is where everything that you described there, this is so strange. Everything that you described there, I agree with to a degree. And yet I feel that it works to the advantage of the film in depicting this this culture and this society that is ugly and disgusting and, just filled with greed and avarice, and just this idea that there's a hopelessness in the film that was overriding the society in 71. And you also take into account that the book had been trying to make this into a film for numerous years, probably over a couple of decades, since its first publication in the mid-70s. And I think the fact that it was produced and released in 98 at the turn of the millennium, that factors into a big part of the social commentary on this it's kind of like science fiction, where it's a commentary on the society we live in. Yes, it's 71. Yes, it's near the end of the Vietnam War and the struggles in America, the failure of the Great Society, Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, the emergence of Watergate, the failure of the Summer of Love, the tragedy of Altamont. This idea, and this is all shit that we've talked about numerous times in these episodes, and we'll continue. Yeah. Even if it's these are experiences and historical events that occurred before our lifetimes. You and I are interpreting them after the fact. We didn't live through them. Right. we've done interviews, which is to say just talking to older people, and read these stories about what the society was. And in a lot of cases, it's a warped version because both memory and personal, the protection of the personal of a person's standing might get in the way. Everybody wants to imagine that they would have been the hero of the story and they wouldn't have fallen into it. But, so many people were part of the problem of the late 60s. This film is a weird kind of nightmarish memory of a time. And I wonder, was it as bad as this? Was it exaggerated? I can't help but imagine that it's probably exaggerated. However, I do believe that they're, in the course of living and experiencing life and people and the culture of which I am a part of. I'm not dismissing American culture. I'm not one of these people that says fuck America. But I will not stand back and say America, love it or leave it. I'm not one of those assholes either. So it's. I think this is an honest and fair portrait of America in 1971, and a truly great adaptation of a book that still stands the test of time. And I think part of the issue with the film is your attitude going into it. Strangely, I think you're a little bit more hopeful than I am in viewing this. The first time, I'll tell you exactly what I mean. I have always had a disgust and palpable disgust for Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. I think it's the worst imaginable place for humanity. I think Thompson describes it as, or at least he describes Bazooka Circus, which is Circus, as what would have happened if the Nazis had won the war.
Yeah.
That's what he says in both the book and in the film. And I think it's an accurate description of a place that should not exist, but ecologically, it should not exist. But it's there to accentuate and exaggerate the greed and truly the inhumanity of the species. I mean, I disliked Vegas my first trip there, and I've hated it a little bit more every time I've been back. It's a horrible, horrible place that I have no fucking use for. And more than just having no use for, I look at it as an embarrassment. And it's a cultural embarrassment. It's an embarrassment as a species, and it's also very sad to know that people from all around the world, both they hate it and they look down on us because of it, and yet they flock to it. They flock to it because it's reptilian in its or at least it appeals to the reptilian sense in all of us. Tits, sure. Ass, winning money, and
losing money,
and more likely losing money. And I think that, for me at least, going into a film that already backs my own opinion of it goes a hell of a long way towards making it a better experience for me. So I'm also watching something. I think a lot of people watch this film and they see it as being excessive, which it is. It's incredibly excessive, but I think the city itself is excessive.
Yeah.
When you add the city and the era, and we're talking about, less than 10 years after the assassination of John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, the escalating and never-ending Vietnam War, Richard Nixon and Watergate, Richard Nixon
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm cutting you off.
No, please.
That's the thing, is that, like, your views on Vegas, okay, fine. I don't have this hopeful view of Vegas where it's like, like, I don't know what you've said.
No, not hopeful, just more hopeful than me. That ain't saying a lot. That ain't saying hopeful.
I don't even understand what that means. Like, I don't even understand what it means.
Okay.
Because it's like,
yeah.
My issue is this. Vegas, with all its grotesque excess, right? It seems to take on the tone of the 70s. If you know that, you can apply that to the film, and you can say the idea of, or certain aspects of the 70s, you can say, okay, I can put that on as a visual metaphor for Vegas, self-indulgence, like all of that. All these things that you're rattling off, you don't get a sense of that, because Vegas is a bad example of that because it's self-contained. So you don't get, like, okay, Vegas in the 90s versus Vegas today versus Vegas in the 70s. Yeah, you can say, oh, well, the Tropicana or this fucking thing or that or this Circus or New York, or whatever fucking casinos implode and then they fucking build a new one and then this goes up and this goes down. Sure, those are markers to say, well, okay, this is the Vegas of Bugsy Siegel. This is the Vegas of Frank Sinatra. This is blah, blah. You can say that. That's like the real estate. Those are the landmarks. But in terms of, like, the greater society, you're not going to find context of the greater society at fucking Harrah's. Like, you're not. You're going to find what's inside Harrah's. And if you go in knowing the context of the greater society, then you can apply that context yourself. You can superimpose that and say, well, this craps table at fucking Harrah's represents Donald Trump playing fucking craps with the economy right now. And you can fucking play those games and do that. But the thing is, as I said, with all of its crazy, grotesque excess, yes, it takes on the tone of the 70s, but the tone of the 70s doesn't feel fucked up unless you know that the tone of the 70s only existed because of the loss of what all of the idealism of the 60s. And that's what I'm saying is missing from this film. Like, you don't get enough of that to really pay. Like, The Hangover you have to know what was, like, the bad side of it. You have to know that, okay, you can get drunk. It's like Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
Two fucking dead teenagers. Why? Two dead teenagers from rival families. It doesn't really hurt as much unless you know how deeply in love they were. Then you get a sense of, like, fuck, they were so fucking deeply in love against all fucking odds. And they wanted to be together so badly. And it was such a miscommunication and such a fuck up that they're both fucking dead now. That's the fucking tragedy. And in this, it's like, yeah, this is all fucked up. Like, it's a fucking consumerist hellscape. But you don't get the sense of the lost 60s, that sense of what he describes as the fantastic universal sense of whatever we were doing was right of the 60s. He says that in the line, but it's like...
It's during the wave speech, yeah.
Right. And you're looking at all this crazy shit on the screen, which is like, okay, it's cool. but that gets lost in a haze of just getting fucked up and wandering around that consumerist hellscape. So what I'm saying is that we need more of that sense of loss so that the fucking hangover and the bad trip, those things mean something other than just, oh, got fucked up, got too fucked up, and now you feel bad. It's like we need a spiritual hangover from the pain of going from something that, as Hunter S. Thompson himself said, was like, we felt like we were doing something right. It's like when they describe the Summer of Love, 67. They say, like, San Francisco, you listen to these people talk about it, and they're like, it was fucking for I don't know if it was, maybe it was Jerry Garcia. He said it was like, for 2 weeks, it was like perfect. But then all these people like keep coming in because they hear about it. And so like there are more fucking hippies and wannabe hippies and people gawking at hippies and doing tour buses, looking in, driving by. There's more people storming that area than the city can sustain. There's a lot of bad drugs that are starting to come in. It's just taking a turn. And so to see the idealism, and that's the lesson that's one of the lessons of the film is the sense of like idealism kind of, it's lost. And how do you guard against that? But to have such a sense of like purpose of we shall overcome, we can fucking do all these things, we can fight the power, we can fight the war in Vietnam, we can do all of these different causes, we can just spread love, we can fix the world through love, and then the reality is like, no, you fucking can't. You can't fix the world through fucking love. And you can't fucking expand everyone's mind through drugs when people a lot of times just want to get fucked up. The lesson of that, I think, is lost in this film because it does just become like, well, we're just going to get fucked up. Even though the lesson is there, I think it gets lost. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. When I said hopeful, I guess the word that I should have been looking for was more objective. You're a little bit more objective in your examination of the world that is on that screen. So what's missing from it, I think, is a little bit more palpable for you. And for me, I think, number one, I'm a fan of the film. I'm a fan of the visuals. I'm a fan of Gilliam and what both Benicio and Johnny Depp are doing in this film. And I think there's something very heartfelt about their about everybody's work on this film, including Thompson's. What I think is the difference is that I'm all right with Gilliam and Thompson plopping us into a world that has already gone to shit without giving us the background on it because I'm already coming into the film with an understanding of the background. I know about the Summer of Love. I know about the hippie generation, the movements. I know about this idea of opening consciousness and
right.
You know, I know you do too.
That's why it makes it feel missing.
See, for me, it works in the opposite direction because it's like, let's get to the disappointment. I've already seen that part of the movie. Now I'm watching it with the eyesight of this is just the disappointment, and I'm being a cynical and pessimistic person. It leans into what I believe without being totally and completely in keeping with what I want. I think it is excessive, and I think it does go too far. But I think the city itself and the times in which it's depicting were excessive and went too far. And I don't think it becomes just a film, or at least overpowered by the drug use in the film. I think drug use is very important in the film, and I think taking it to the extreme that they do, the vomiting, the passing out, the destroying of the hotel rooms, I think it speaks volumes to the emptiness. And, there's also an understanding that neither Gonzo or Duke are very good people in this movie. They're not good guys.
I mean, there's also
but they don't have to be.
There's also a rock and roll metaphor in there too, because it lines. I mean, like in this film, the '60s countercultural music becomes background, and it becomes fucking Muzak. It becomes fucking Muzak versions of the Beatles. You know what I mean? And ultimately, Zeppelin and all the these heavy '70s bands. Yeah, they would destroy the fucking hotel rooms, the throwing the TVs from the balcony, all that stuff. That's there too, and being this rock star journalist lifestyle, that's in there too. I get all that, and I agree with you on that. And I think for what the movie is, it's a wild ride. The visuals, it's an achievement. This film,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm down to talk about all of that in that positive sense. I just really feel like that missing piece is so the king died. No, the queen died, and the king died. They say there's a line about that says that's a story.
Yeah,
the queen died, and the king died of grief. That's a plot. That's a plot. Faces of Meth. Have you seen Faces of Meth?
No.
Have you seen that? That's
no. Oh, yes, I've seen that.
You've seen that, right? Where it's a website and it
mug
has
shots.
The mug shots.
Mm-hmm.
This is a fucking, or that joke. I don't know if it was you or someone that used to find a girl in the audience and say you used to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Who said that?
A buddy of mine.
Was it you? Or
no, it was a buddy of mine who used to say that. Damn, girl, you look like you used to be fine.
Right.
Yeah.
All of those three examples that I gave that are different and weird, but to me that it's the same. It's
mm-hmm.
It's like the before and after. We're seeing the after. We're seeing the picture of some chick with all these sores on her face from fucking drug use. That's on one page. If you were to turn the page back and, I don't know, it's Monica Bellucci or it's fucking Cindy Crawford, or picture the most beautiful woman you can think of, whoever the fuck that is. There's something all the more, just because that's how our brains work, that it's so fucking much more tragic when you look back and you say, fuck. And you can, it doesn't have to be the most beautiful woman. It can be the most fucking, handsome dude. What the fuck happened to that guy?
Yeah.
Fuck. It means all the much more when you have some kind of knowledge of where it's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And typically, you're the guy in these episodes that goes, I didn't feel like I knew these people.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone right now is, that you must admit, regular listeners are right now, at best, they're fucking nodding their heads and going, yeah, no, that's true. At worst, they're shrugging and going yeah, he does have somewhat of a point. You're typically the guy that's I don't get a sense of this fucking world. I don't get a sense
mm-hmm.
of these characters. I don't get I don't think you need a sense of necessarily the characters because of and in a little while I want to get into why the fuck does Hunter S. Thompson matter at all anyway? Because that's kind of where I'm at. In general, with everything that's happening in the world, I'm cool, but why should I fucking care? Because the fucking hellscape outside is more interesting than most of the shit that I'm seeing so-called entertainment-wise. So it better fucking it better be relevant somehow to me. So we'll get into that, but it's I don't know if in another timeline, if it were not Gilliam or if it were something else, if you would have that critique of this film. You yourself said that supposedly, I mean, I don't know if, whatever, but you said you thought I was more objective about it, but or about the reality of that world or whatever you said, but I don't know if you wouldn't have these questions about missing context in another timeline.
I don't know, because I think, a film either feels right or it feels like it's missing something. And for you, it feels like it's missing something. For me, it doesn't. For me, I'm watching the film as a commentary towards something that I already know of. Like I'm or at least familiar with the hype of the 60s, this period where you talk about Jerry Garcia talking about for 2 weeks it was perfect. I mean, I grew up watching television and music and the arts talking about the 1960s as a period of growth and understanding and peace and the love of all people. Of what?
Yeah.
This taking in and this understanding that we could create a utopian society where we all benefited from the love and potential of the species, and that quickly got curtailed. It quickly they put a leash on that, which is what they do, which is what they always do, and so
they sell you the fucking leash.
Well, they do, yeah. You put it on, yeah, you absolutely do. So part of what I think happened, what I think is, Mac, your argument does hold water, and it does, it's valid. But I've always felt like, when you're watching a movie, if what's good about the film overwhelms what is missing, or the plot holes, or where something is shortchanged, one element of the story is shortchanged, if the rest of the movie isn't just good, but is exceedingly good, then you can be a little bit more forgiving. And I feel that with Gilliam's films up until the 2000s, this was the case. I've always felt that he, for his shortcomings in working with actors and character developments, he's always created worlds that I wanted to go to. And this is one of the interesting things about him as a director, is that he can take someplace, he can create something wholly fantastic. He can create a city being besieged by Turks in a war. He can create the moon, a kingdom on the moon. He can create a ministry of disinformation, or he can take Philadelphia and turn it into this modern day dystopia that feels real. He takes something that is familiar and adds a level of production design that is, it just makes it.
He's a master.
What's that?
He's a master.
He is a master. Yeah, that he is a master. There's a lot of elements of his films that lack. But I think with this film in particular, you have two characters that are. I think part of the thing about the film is that, especially in the way that it was marketed as this good time drug movie. And I think a lot of people got lost in that, so that when it starts to turn, when it starts to become the reality of of a sick and dying society, a society that is both absurd, selfish, and self-destructive. I think it becomes too much for a lot of people to handle. And so the excess of the drug use, the vomiting, the Dutch angles and the moving camera. And here's the thing, that I've only really seen this movie on home video. The first time I saw it was in a theater. And then I saw it about 15 years later on a midnight showing at the New Art in Santa Monica. That second time at the New Art, I felt sick. Watching this movie on the big screen and the way Gilliam, the framing, the movement, the camera movement, what's being depicted, it gave you a sense of motion sickness, and it was a very difficult watch.
Yeah,
but there was a part.
Like you asked.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
But that was, for me, that added to both the excitement and the artistry of the film, because it was making me. I know you don't go into a movie wanting that. You don't want to be sick watching a movie, but it made everything more personal and powerful. And I learned lessons from this movie. I learned the power of. This is not a movie about drug addicts. This is a movie about people losing themselves in something that is trying to make sense. They're disillusioned. They're sad. They're very sad men. And they're sad because they're searching for an America that they believe that no longer exists, but if you're realistic, you'll realize never existed.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you're asking me, like, did I see it in a theater? And I'm thinking about and hearing you talk about it. I'm like, I was probably fucking high as fuck when I saw it in the theater, and I probably did, and I probably don't remember, like,
It would be a rite of passage to watch this movie fucked up, but yeah.
Yeah, like rite of passage, like into it, like fucking 6 years like that at that point. You know what I mean? Like,
well, I drank for 14 years, so I mean, we all have our crosses to carry. Yeah, that's that was my desert. Yeah, I know. I mean, and I'm not saying that in terms of like this like cautionary tale thing, because it was just kind of like being a teenager and like smoking out and going to see some crazy movie. Like, you know what I mean? Like, on that level, it's like, it's not based on math. It's fucking no harm, no foul. The worst part is if I don't remember having seen it, but I feel like I did, and it's kind of like these guys in this film, it's like, they're searching. They're not there, obviously, literally searching for America. Like, you don't fucking go to Vegas to search for America unless that in itself is a political kind of like viewpoint. And this is, I'm not like tagging the political tail on a donkey here. Like, these guys were political. Mm-hmm. Well, that is one thing that gets lost in this film. I mean, it's hinted at. You get the idea that Gonzo is a civil rights attorney. He's Chicano. He's based on a guy named Oscar Zeta Acosta, who was a leader in the East LA Brown Pride community. And a lot of what Fear and Loathing comes out of was an investigation of the Ruben Salazar murder. Right. Some would say accidental death. I would say murder in East LA in a bar where police had a standoff for some reason, shot a can of tear gas into the bar.
Yep. Hit him in the head,
took off part of his head, and then the standoff back and forth, and how the LAPD covered up a great deal about it, and there was Thompson writing for Rolling Stone and possibly other magazines, I guess a journeyman journalist who was most famous at that point for, I think, his not an expose, but his writings on his book on the Hell's Angels. I think that was right before this. Interesting book.
We'll do the time. Finish that, and then we'll do the timeline after.
So
let's stay on that.
So what stemmed from this was the Chicano community did not trust a white journalist. They did not trust somebody investigating this or writing about it, justifiably in many cases. But I think Thompson was an advocate, and number one, he was looking for a story, but he was also very sympathetic to this movement, in particular because of his friendship with Acosta. And so they needed to get out of LA in order to talk, discuss, and write this article. I guess it was Sports Illustrated offered the opportunity to write captions for the Mint Julep 500 or whatever the fuck that race was in the middle of the desert. So it's just a pretense to get them out there. It's almost like a bad plot line to just
which is Gonzo.
Yeah, and that's what they get out there. That's what they do. And this. So you're missing that element of it. But for me, and maybe that's the shortcoming of the film, but going into the movie, knowing the history and knowing what happened there, even if I didn't know it initially on that first viewing in '98, it opened up a doorway into a history that reveals itself in a very sad and painful way. I read both of Acosta's books. I've read Revolt of the Cockroach People and the Autobiography of a Brown Buffalo. I've read some of Thompson, and what I've found is even though I think these guys are depicted as complete assholes in this movie, I still think that they had a certain honor when it came to the fight that they had undertaken. This fight for truth, this fight for journalistic integrity, civil rights, and mobilizing the community. I think they were good men in that case, even though they're horrible men in so many other ways. And I think that Gilliam doesn't shy away from that, nor do Benicio Del Toro or Johnny Depp in their portrayals.
Right.
So I think it's a very brave movie in that sense, and I guess that makes it very difficult for an audience to... It's weird because I think a lot of audiences want a safer, more black and white...
They want a good trip. They want a nice, fuzzy, good trip.
Yeah. They want heroes they can root for. They want a storyline that they can agree with. And that's not what this movie is. This movie is a tumultuous look at a tumultuous time. And I think what is achieved in it is an honest portrayal of the sadness and disappointment in realizing that there's a hopelessness in not just American society, but if you look at the bigger picture, the hopelessness of the species as a culture that can care for one another and take care of itself. Ultimately, it's a very pessimistic film, but there is hope. Like I've never understood why people would dismiss everything. Why people would dismiss so much as pessimistic and cynical when the fact that you continue on a daily basis to fight means that there is some hope. that you're looking for something, you know? The fact that I haven't eaten a fucking bullet in these 50 years shows that I still believe that you can accomplish something, that you can make a difference, even if it's only with my nephew or my friendships or the 123 people that are going to listen to this fucking episode. It matters. That matters. And I don't believe that I don't believe it matters on a bigger scale of changing the world, but I do believe that it matters to those one or two people, those 123 people that listen, in the same way that Carlin mattered to me, that Mooney, that Richard Pryor, that Bukowski, that Mark Twain, that all of these authors, Kafka, you talked about Kafka earlier, that shit resonated with me, and it's important. So when you see something like this, here we go. It's a matter of the baggage that I'd carry into a movie, which makes this, it makes it either me too forgiving for the film and its shortcomings, or it amplifies what I believe is great about the movie. And I'll say this much. There have been Gilliam films that I have major problems with. But even in the shit that I think he slips and he misses the mark, I'd rather watch a bad Gilliam film than the old cliche of I'd rather watch a bad Gilliam than great Michael Bay. And I'm just throwing Michael Bay out of there. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yes, of course. I mean, like, give me this shit over fucking a Marvel movie. Mm-hmm. And like, I know there are people who like those movies out there that. Many of you probably listen to this shit, and I'll fuck Marvel movies. I can watch a Marvel movie and be like, "That's cool. I had a good time. Big old thing of popcorn. Cool, amazing." But in terms of on a higher level, fucking like where I stand in terms of cinema, fuck Marvel movies. Now, I'm going to throw it back at you the way you've said it. And this is not like a tit for tat. What I'm saying is like this kind of just goes to the greater kind of, this is the dialogue. This is cinema. This is the subjective versus the objective. This is all of it. It's fucking like, in the past, I've gone into like these rants about all this shit. And you've said to me, you're like, see, everything that you said about, that you've talked about, I didn't see it on the screen, and all the stuff you talked about, in many ways, was more interesting than what I saw on the screen. Now, if that movie was what you just talked about, then I would be down. And you're laughing because you've said that.
Yeah, I've said it, and I mean it, and I recognize it with this movie too.
Because like you're describing, and I know this. I know a lot of the stuff that you're talking about. The Strange Rumblings in Aztlan article, that's where the interview comes about the Ruben Salazar murder. And I'm listening to you talk about it, I'm like, fuck, this is fucking fascinating. This is fucking, like, what a crazy time. You know what I mean? Like, you're talking about, like, this is not only of American society. No, like, you think about fucking, think about the protests, student protests and war protests that were happening all fucking around the world in 68. The Ruben Salazar thing, that happened during a moratorium on the Vietnam War in like 1970.
Yeah.
In LA. You have fucking protests in fucking Paris in 68. You have protests in fucking Prague in fucking the Prague Spring.
Shit, we had the act of killing that was going on.
Like this is a mass, like, worldwide shit that's happening all over the fucking world. And why? You know what I mean? Like, there was some kind of like, like, to be hippie about it, it's like there was some universal mind shit happening, man. Like, and like, right? And so the question is, why the fuck should we care about Hunter S. Thompson? Who was Hunter S. Thompson, and why should we care?
Okay.
The Hunter, I don't know if you want to go back and forth, or
no, I'll listen. I'll listen.
Give me your take first.
Yeah. For me, he was. Why Hunter S. Thompson matters is because And I'll tell you, 2 months ago, I was reading The Great Shark
Mm-hmm.
Hunt, and it was basically a good portion of it was sports writing, the Kentucky Derby, his first meetings with Ralph Steadman. But the most important thing, and things that stood out to me, was his depiction of the Nixon administration, the elections, Watergate. And I remember writing to you and to my friend Arnold and to a couple, and anybody who would fucking listen to be bluntly honest,
Right.
because when you get to that point, you're just like, you're screaming into the fucking air, and you're just hoping. I remember telling you, if you change Nixon to Trump, this shit would be the same. It'd be slight differences, which was both frightening and very sad to me, because I just had to acknowledge that nothing ever changes. And this story is the same as we've always known. And it's not, some people would say, well, that's just par for the course. That's the way it's always been. So it's not as big a deal. But it's worse than that, because it's the slow eradication of our personal identity and our sense of self. People were protesting and supporting Nixon in 71 the same way that they're doing Trump. And that's the thing that really both frightens me and saddens me, because I ask myself I ask myself in regards to the culture, how do people buy into this shit? How do you?
I think it's worse now.
It's worse now because everything gets worse. But the point is, it all started. It didn't even all start there. It probably goes back to the founding of this country, or the movement to this continent, or it's just the idea that it was ever great, or that you could ever make America great again, because there was nothing. I'm not meaning to shit on, I'm not one of these people that's just like, fuck America and this country's bullshit. I'm not that guy, I'm more fuck the species. Fuck human beings.
Like,
this is the shit we did. Yeah. Don't tell me that
yeah, you're like, fuck God. He just created me so I could hope for him.
Yeah, exactly. So I watching a movie like this just kind of reminds you of how repetitive and obvious and predictable everything is. So with Thompson, what's important about Thompson now is that every generation has somebody that's speaking out. And if you study the times and you listen to the people that were standing on a platform screaming at the masses and saying, just pay attention. Just look at what's going on. Just don't be so fucking blind and accepting as to just be okay with loss of liberty, loss of rights, loss of individual identity, while at the same time forgetting about us caring about one another. I think it's important to listen to those voices, and whatever Thompson's fault as a human being, and I imagine that they were many, to know that somebody existed at that time that was pointing it out. I think you need to go back to the writings. I think you need to pay attention. That old cliche of those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. That shit is a cliche for a reason. It's true. And it's crazy how, as a 50-year-old man, I will talk to people in their 20s, and they'll say shit like, well, that was way before I was born. And I'm sitting here thinking, that was before I was born.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was before you were born or not doesn't fucking matter, you stupid cunt. Yeah. What matters is... What matters is paying attention and, listening to the voices of the past. So, a Thompson is relevant. Carlin is relevant. Mark Twain is relevant. I wish I had some ethnicity in there. Martin Luther King,
old white men are relevant.
No. Malcolm X and Ruben Salazar Acosta, these guys are all relevant. If you're raging against the machine, whether I agree with the rage or not, it's important to recognize and to study the culture around it, the historical significance. What is the historical aspect surrounding the attitudes that makes that history significant? And I think with a movie like this, it's maybe I'm giving too much power to this movie, but you got to also remember, I was 24. I was either 23 or 24 when I first saw this movie. Mm-hmm. And it was probably the last great thing, and I consider it a great film. It was the last great thing that Gilliam would do before he spiraled out of control with the worst luck of any filmmaker in the history of movies. And you can look up Lost in La Mancha, look up my Ricky J. Alejandro Jodorowsky Giliam episode where I get progressively drunker over two or so hours. Fun time for me.
RickRamos the brown buffalo.
RickRamos the what? What the fuck did you say?
The brown buffalo.
That was a fun episode.
Samoan lawyer.
I mean, so that's... Would this movie have been the same if I had seen it at 40 the first time? I don't know. Probably not.
I don't know.
Yeah, you can't know. You encounter you encounter shit at the time you encounter it, and it resonates thusly. And my own personal feelings towards the culture play into my reading of this movie. So you got to remember, I was very angry. I was very young. I hated most things that were, for lack of a better term, white. This was some white shit that, that's back in those days before I became the enlightened individual that you know now. It was a much angrier, pessimistic me. And this movie fed into it. But I do think that I'm objective enough to look at the quality of the filmmaking and the storytelling. Yeah, the film has its problems, and a lot of the problems that you point out are valid. But like I said, no, go ahead.
I don't even know if the problem. It's not like I would say the film has holes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like what you like. There's something that you're seeing that is necessarily a problem. I just feel like it's what you're not seeing that is missing.
Yeah.
The Thompson, for people who don't know, he was a writer who spearheaded basically what was called Gonzo journalism as a part of what was called new journalism in the 60s and 70s. So this was, at the time, this was very revolutionary. It was a break from a stiff sense of like reporting for magazines and journals and newspapers. It was creative. It was like a literary nonfiction. It was writers putting themselves in their stories. So before it used to be, if you're writing a story, you're doing the who, what, when, where, why, how stuff. So it's like, this is what happened on March 15, 1967, blah, blah, blah. This is what happened. And you're just getting you're just trying to get the facts. So for better or for worse, a group of journalists start to get creative. Tom Wolfe, he's writing about cars. He's like, vroom, vroom. And so people are going like, what the fuck is this? He wrote in like 68, 67, the electric Kool-Aid acid test about King Kesey and the Merry Pranksters driving around.
Okay. That was Thomas Wolfe? Okay.
Yeah. Dave Talese, like Tom Wolfe, impeccably dressed. He writes a famous article, I think it was for maybe Esquire. It's called Frank Sinatra Has a Cold. And it was like this big deal because it was like, okay, Frank Sinatra, but it's the 60s. And so like Frank Sinatra seems like an old fucking fuddy-duddy.
Yeah.
And it was more about him trying to get a hold of Frank Sinatra than anything else. Joan Didion, she's writing about California and herself in California and her thoughts and the Doors and this asshole named fucking Hunter S. Thompson is like, he's opening up his shit like this. He's opening up, we were somewhere around Barstow on the edge of the desert when the drugs began to take hold. And you go, oh, tell me more. He wrote about he embedded with the Hells Angels.
Yeah.
He got the shit kicked out of him. He wrote about Kentucky Derby. And he was really writing about not necessarily like the events. It's like if you're going to write about the Super Bowl or WrestleMania or some fucking Trump rally, you're not, it's like going and writing not about the actual thing, but it's about what's happening on the outside or what's happening around it. What's the carnival atmosphere? What's the social political stuff that's happening around the events? The Dark Circus, Fear and Loathing, which he wrote the one you talked about, Fear and Loathing on the campaign trail. He's a very was because you had said earlier that like about taking a bullet. Well, he took a fucking bullet 15 years ago. No, yeah, it
was about 15 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, he took one. He was an alcoholic, drug taking, NRA gun toting, rebellious cultural critic who he was able to make a living. He was able to make a living attacking the powers that be, and in that sense, he's both aspirational and anomalous nowadays. He was a myth maker, but he also, like, while creating myths about himself, he was there to shatter myths about our culture. And in that sense, like, we need those people.
Yeah.
We need the people who are going to poke holes in the fucking, I'm saying this movie has holes, well, we need people to poke the holes in the fucking documentary that we're watching. And in the propaganda that we're fucking hearing. Like, interestingly, E. Jean Carroll, in her own right, a Gonzo journalist, she wrote a biography of him. She's also the one that fucking sued Trump for sexual assault.
Oh, wow, okay.
And won. She is the one who, in her biography of him, which is exaggerated, she wrote his timeline of like how many drugs he would take in a day. I don't know if you've heard this.
Yeah, I've heard that. His daily intake and his breakfast and all that. Yeah,
it's bullshit. But it's Joe Rogan. There's a clip of him like, "Oh my God, I'm Joe Rogan." You know, I'll believe anything.
No, I'll just give it a platform. That's what he says.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Like day, like night, you know?
Yeah.
All day, all night, or where the fuck that thing says. But it's she describes, I'll read it. Just to get a sense of this is the myth that he created, but that now it's like people it perpetuates itself. And look, like it's based on something because he fucking did live excessively. So 3 p.m. rise. So he wakes up. 3:05. Chivas Regal with the morning papers, Dunhills, cigarettes. 3:45, cocaine. 3:50, another glass of Chivas, a Dunhill. 4:05, first cup of coffee, a Dunhill. 4:15, cocaine. 4:16, orange juice, Dunhill. 4:30, cocaine. 4:54, cocaine. 5:05, cocaine. 5:11, coffee, Dunhills. 5:30, more ice in the Chivas. 5:45, cocaine. 6 p.m., grass to take the edge off the day. 7:05, Woody Creek Tavern for lunch, Heineken, 2 margaritas, coleslaw, a taco salad, a double order of fried onion rings, carrot cake, ice cream, a bean fritter, Dunhills, another Heineken, cocaine, and for the ride home, a snow cone, which is a glass of shredded ice, which is poured over 3 or 4 jiggers of Chivas. 9 p.m., start snorting cocaine seriously. 10, drops acid. 11, chartreuse, which is a liqueur, cocaine, grass. 11:30, cocaine. Midnight, Hunter S. Thompson is ready to write. 12:05 through 6 a.m., chartreuse, cocaine, grass, Chivas, coffee, Heineken, clove cigarettes, grapefruit, Dunhills, orange juice, gin, continuous pornographic movies. 6, the hot tub, champagne, Dove bars, fettuccine Alfredo. 8 a.m., house sandwiches, sleeping pill. 8:20 a.m., sleep.
Yeah.
This is the it's like, it's not only like they don't make them like they used to type of thing. And look, like this guy lived, it's also a fucking like, this film that we're talking about is parallel to his own life, where it's like, yeah, he had incredible highs, but this guy also blew his fucking brains out.
Yeah.
In 2005. So what are the, he lived in Aspen. He would fucking shoot off guns all the time. He was nuts.
Yeah.
Did he have mental illness? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying he was mad. He was a mad writer who fucking wrote about a mad world. Was he a good person? I don't fucking know. Probably not. That's why he fucking matters, though. And all the getting fucked up in Vegas, it's like, what's the lesson? What is the really, like, again, when you are dropping acid or whatever, it's like you want to have the good time. Like these film goers who come to this movie to say, oh, it's a good, about people getting high. Okay, cool. Oh, wait, this shit's fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
Like this shit got dark real quick. I don't want to see vomit caked on the side of a car, like on the side of a convertible. That's not cool. Well, no, it's not cool. It's like Danny Sugarman says of Jim Morrison, like you live like Jim Morrison, you die like Jim Morrison. All those fucking, what does Pete Townsend say in one of those histories of rock and roll? He's like, these were your icons. They're my fucking friends. They all fucking died. That's what this is. This is the dark side. I'm saying, like, you need the yin and yang. You need the light side in order to see I want to see the dark clouds cover up the sun.
Yeah. So
that it fucking makes it that much more fucked up. In this film, you're already in the storm. So, like, you missed that part. But now that we're in it, it's like, well, what's the lesson? The lesson is fucking, like, one of them is, like, idealism and excess, especially when you put those two together. They need to be tempered by, one, a skepticism for one's own bullshit, whatever that bullshit may be, whether you're a hippie or a fucking conservative. Like, you need to have some skepticism of your own fucking bullshit. Especially if you're overly idealistic about it and excessive about it. And number two, this kind of understanding that even if you don't have all this bullshit, which you do, you are still also susceptible to potentially being bullshitted by the powers that be. Like, that's a lesson. Like, that's the lesson of the fucking loss of the 60s, whatever that was. For the left, it's like, well, I remember when Obama got elected, and there were a lot of people, like, sending texts and fucking, like, a lot of people, like, theater people were like, this is amazing. And it's like, yeah, symbolically, it's amazing. But that guy's a fucking politician. Like, that guy's not what you're making him out to be. And he will let you down.
I remember telling people, you have to understand that if you're in line to become president of the United States, then you have done some shit to put you in that position. And they own you. They fucking own you.
That's what that is.
That's the job, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, and you're going to toe the line, and you're going to do what they say. And I remember, I think the best way that I ever heard it put was, Bill Hicks was talking about Bill Clinton and bombing Bosnia. And he said when Bill Clinton was elected president, he created this scenario, fucking beautiful storytelling. He created this scenario where they take him down into the sub-basement of the White House and sitting around a table of the 7 fat cat corporate, pricks that own everything. They're sitting there smoking their cigars and say, play the film. The lights go down. The screen comes down. And they begin watching film of the Kennedy assassination from an angle that you've never seen it before. Film ends.
100%.
The lights go up. And the guy looks at Clinton and says, any questions? He's like, just what my agenda is. That was fucking on point. For me,
100%.
That's what it is. That's what it fucking is. So, I mean...
And it doesn't have to be a fucking crazy conspiracy theory shit.
No.
Like, that's built into this exaggerated version of, like, Network, where he goes into the boardroom and he's like, Ned Beatty is like, talking about the universal laws.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be on that level. It's just kind of like, you know where your fucking bread is buttered, asshole.
Yeah.
Like, so, again, like, idealism and excess, especially together, need to be tempered by these realizations that, like, don't get caught up in your own fucking bullshit and don't get caught up in someone else's either. Like, you have to be on guard against that, because it's like, we shall overcome. And it's like, well, that came out of the idea that there was something that needed to be overcome. Yes, absolutely. And then that shit fucking collapsed.
Yeah. This
idea of, like, hope and the audacity of hope, that's a great line, and I think we need that. But the idea that we were in this, like, post-racial society all of a sudden was bullshit. And it ultimately led to where we are today with Trump.
Yeah.
For the right, it's easy to be seduced, either if you're like some asshole podcaster who gets audience captured, where you're like, I'm going to shift to the right, or Gavin Newsom right now, who's like, I'm going to fucking start a podcast, and I'm going to have all the fucking right-wingers on my shit, because I'm looking at 2028. It may seem cool and edgy to be this fucking Muskian crypto bro, or this Andrew Tate edgelord asshole, or a racist fucking from my heart, Nazi Zig Heiling, fucking swastika, fucking Nazi salute throwing piece of shit. But you guys are on a fucking bad trip. I mean, those people are not listening to the show, but they're on a fucking bad trip. And some of them know it, and some of them don't. Probably most of those fucking MAGA fucking people, they don't understand that they're on the wrong fucking side of history. because of their own fucking racism and whatever bullshit that they're fucking writing. But it's like, whatever your fucking ideology, like, beware. You go to Disneyland, there's a fucking there's the Winnie the Pooh ride, and it's fucking psychedelic as hell. You fucking go in and it's like, it's all Winnie the Pooh, and it's like the music and it's talking about fucking heffalumps and woozles, and it's like heffalumps and woozles, and then there's this fucking there's this like flipping, spinning Winnie the Pooh, and he's like, and it's telling you to beware of the heffalumps and the woozles, and it's like he's spinning, and he's like, beware, beware, and it's like, motherfuckers, like, beware, because you guys are fucking heffalumps and woozles yourselves. And so whatever your political fucking stance is, whatever your beliefs are, fucking temper that shit with a sense of perspective. Yeah. Because otherwise and that includes this film, because otherwise you're just on a bad trip. Like the ending part of the film, and I'll read this, and that's basically all I have left to say. And I'll quote basically what he says at the end, and then whatever you have to say is what you have to say. And I feel like it was also something that was kind of just relegated to the background in the film. But in the film, he says, Thompson as Duke, played by Johnny Depp, says, "We're all wired into a survival trip now. No more of the speed that fueled the 60s. That was the fatal flaw in Tim Leary's trip. He crashed around America selling consciousness expansion without giving a thought to the grim realities lying in wait for all those people who took him seriously. All those pathetically eager acid freaks who thought they could buy peace and understanding for $3 a hit. But their loss and failure is ours too. What Leary took down with him was the central illusion of the whole lifestyle that he helped create. A generation of permanent cripples who never understood the old mystic fallacy of the acid culture. The desperate assumption that somebody, or at least some force, is tending the light at the end of the tunnel."
We should leave it at that. Thank you for listening. Thank you for Mr. Lamberg for the recommendation. For those of you who are looking to contribute to keep us going, to keep the lights on, to keep this fucking labor of love on the air, we appreciate everything and anything that you can do. Please hit us up at buymeacoffee.com/watchRickRamos. That's buymeacoffee.com/watchRickRamos. We'll be back.